The greatest legal casino heist in history didn't involve guns, masks, or elaborate schemes. It was executed in plain sight, using nothing more than human psychology and a microscopic printing defect that the entire casino industry had overlooked. August 2012. The scene: one of London's most exclusive gambling establishments, Crockfords Casino. A man walks through the ornate entrance carrying $1 million in cash. The staff recognize him immediately. Phil Ivey, a living legend in the gambling world, one of the most feared poker players ever to sit at a table. With 10 World Series of poker bracelets and over $30 million in documented tournament winnings, Ivey was poker royalty. The casino management practically trips over themselves to accommodate him. Private room? Arranged. VIP treatment? Absolutely. Special requests? Whatever he needs. To them, this is simply another high roller looking for the thrill of risking enormous sums of money. They see dollar signs, prestige, and the honor of hosting one of gambling's elite. But Phil Ivey isn't here for thrills or ego. He's here to execute something far more sophisticated, a meticulously planned operation that will drain millions from the casino's coffers without ever breaking a single law. Ivey's requests seem innocuous, even ordinary for a superstitious high roller, a Mandarin-speaking dealer. Not unusual. Many Asian high rollers prefer dealers who speak their language. It's seen as a cultural courtesy, nothing more. A specific type of playing cards. Again, wealthy gamblers are known for their peculiar preferences. Some believe certain card manufacturers bring better luck. An automatic shuffling machine. This request is perfectly reasonable from a casino's perspective. It actually speeds up the game, meaning more hands per hour and theoretically more profit for the house. The casino grants every single request without hesitation. They have no reason for suspicion. Phil Ivey is exactly who he appears to be, a legendary gambler with money to burn and odd superstitions to indulge. What they don't realize is they've just handed him every tool he needs to dismantle their operation. Because Ivey isn't alone. Sitting beside him is his partner, Kelly's son, a woman whose journey to this moment began in the most unlikely of places, a jail cell. To understand how this scheme came together, we need to understand the players. Phil Ivey wasn't just another poker professional. He was the poker professional. His rise in the poker world was meteoric. While other players relied on mathematical probability or luck, Ivey possessed something rarer, an almost supernatural ability to read opponents. His face betrayed nothing. His movements were calculated with surgical precision. Opponents described sitting across from him as unnerving, like being analyzed by a machine that could see straight through your soul. For years, Ivey dominated both live and online poker. The online poker boom of the 2000s was particularly lucrative. Professional players could sit at multiple tables simultaneously, grinding out massive profits against recreational players from around the world. Ivey accumulated millions. Then came Black Friday, April 15, 2011. The US government shut down the major online poker sites, freezing player accounts and effectively ending the online poker gold rush overnight. Millions of dollars that professional players had won were suddenly inaccessible, trapped in legal limbo. Sponsorships dried up. The steady stream of easy money from weak online opponents disappeared. Ivey was still one of the best poker players on earth, but the landscape had fundamentally changed. The easy money was gone. He needed a new edge, a new game, a new approach. Kelly's son came from a completely different world. She wasn't a professional gambler. She was a high roller, the type of customer that casinos dream about. Her father was a successful businessman in China, and money had never been an obstacle for her. Casinos treated her like royalty. Private jets, luxury suites, unlimited credit, whatever she desired. Casino executives loved players like Sun because they understood a fundamental truth. High rollers don't beat the house. They might win occasionally. That's part of the thrill. But over time, the mathematical edge always grinds them down. They lose. And they lose big. Sun was no exception. For years, she played and lost. And the casinos were more than happy to facilitate her expensive hobby. Then she lost too much. In a particularly devastating streak, Sun depleted her bankroll. But this is routine for high rollers. Casinos eagerly extend credit lines called markers to keep their biggest customers playing. Sun took a marker from a Las Vegas casino, a perfectly standard arrangement. The problem came when she lent some of that borrowed money to a friend. The friend promised to repay her. They never did. Sun assumed this was just an unfortunate situation that could be resolved later. She didn't realize the severity until she arrived at the airport to leave the country. That's when security apprehended her. In Nevada, defaulting on a casino marker isn't merely a civil debt issue, it's criminal fraud. The casinos and the legal system take these debts extremely seriously. It didn't matter that Sun had the means to pay or that she'd made an honest mistake. She was arrested and thrown into jail. She spent 3 weeks locked up, much of it in solitary confinement. A tiny cell with no television, no books, nothing to occupy her mind except her thoughts, and a single deck of playing cards the guards had given her to pass the endless hours. Hour after hour, day after day, she shuffled those cards, dealt them, stared at them, and that's when she noticed something strange. The backs of the cards weren't perfectly symmetrical. At first, she thought it was just this particular worn deck. But the more she examined them, the more she realized this was a manufacturing defect. The decorative pattern on the card backs was cut slightly off-center. Some cards had more white space on one edge than the other. The difference was minuscule, nearly imperceptible, but once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. The implications hit her like lightning. If she could identify these subtle differences, she could distinguish certain cards from others without ever seeing their faces. She could know which cards were which based purely on these tiny asymmetries. And if this flaw existed in jail-playing cards, it almost certainly existed in casino decks too. This wasn't just a printing error. This was a vulnerability in the entire casino industry, one that no one had ever exploited because no one had ever noticed it. When she was released, Sun immediately tested her theory at casino baccarat tables. It worked. She could identify high-value cards by their backs. But there was a critical problem. She didn't have the status or reputation to make special requests at casino tables. She couldn't dictate how dealers handled the cards or which equipment was used. Her discovery was powerful, but it needed the right person to weaponize it, someone with reputation, influence, and access to the highest stakes games. She needed Phil Ivey. When Kelly Sun approached Phil Ivey with her discovery, he immediately grasped its potential. Ivey had something Sun desperately needed: reputation. Casinos wanted him at their tables. He was known for betting millions in single sessions, often playing recklessly and taking enormous risks that made for exciting, high-action games. If Phil Ivey made special requests, even unusual ones, casinos would accommodate him without question. Together, they had everything required. Sun had discovered the flaw and understood how to exploit it. Ivey had the access and credibility to implement the strategy at the highest levels. But they still faced a fundamental challenge. In baccarat, players aren't allowed to touch the cards. The dealer handles everything. So how could they manipulate the deck without ever laying a finger on it? The answer was elegant. They would make the casino do it for them. Casinos thrive on superstition, particularly among Asian high rollers. These players are famous for elaborate rituals, blowing on dice, refusing to touch certain numbers, demanding entire decks be replaced because they feel unlucky. To Western observers, these behaviors might seem irrational. To casino management, they're simply part of the business. High rollers are indulged, their eccentricities accommodated without question. Ivey and Sun would exploit this cultural understanding. Their strategy, which came to be known as edge sorting, worked like this. Step 1. The Mandarin-speaking dealer. This ensured Kelly Sun could communicate directly with the dealer in Mandarin, making requests that most casino supervisors couldn't understand. It also fit perfectly with the persona of Asian high rollers who prefer dealers speaking their language. Step 2. The lucky card rotation. In baccarat, certain cards are more valuable than others. The cards 6, 7, 8, and 9 are especially important. They're the strongest cards in the game. Sun would tell the dealer, in Mandarin, that she was superstitious and wanted these good luck. Cards turned 180 degrees when revealed. She would instruct the dealer to flip them in a specific direction, always rotating them the same way. To the dealer and any observers, this was just another odd gambling superstition. Asian gambling culture is filled with such rituals, and dealers are trained to accommodate them. But what was really happening was precise deck manipulation. Because the card backs were asymmetric, rotating the high-value cards 180 degrees made them identifiable. Once rotated, these cards had their pattern asymmetry reversed compared to the low-value cards. The deck was now edge-sorted. The high-value and low-value cards could be distinguished by microscopic differences in their edges. Step 3. The automatic shuffler. Here was the critical piece. Normally, a dealer manually shuffles cards between hands, which could randomly rotate cards and destroy the edge-sorted pattern they created. So Ivey requested an automatic shuffling machine, which seemed like a completely reasonable request. Automatic shufflers are common in casinos. They speed up the game and prevent dealer errors. But here's what made them perfect for edge sorting. Automatic shufflers only randomize the order of cards, not their orientation. The machine mixes which card comes next, but it never rotates them. Once the deck was edge sorted with high-value cards rotated one way and low-value cards oriented another way, the automatic shuffler preserved that orientation through every shuffle. With this system in place, Ivey and Son weren't playing baccarat. They were playing with complete information. When Ivey could see from the edge patterns that a high-value card was coming next, he would bet the maximum amount. When he could see a low-value card was coming, he would bet the minimum. In a game designed to be purely chance-based, they had eliminated the uncertainty. They had transformed baccarat from gambling into a systematic extraction of money. The casino believed they were hosting a high roller with quirky superstitions. In reality, they had voluntarily destroyed their own mathematical edge and handed Ivey a system that made winning inevitable. For 9 months, Phil Ivey and Kelly Son traveled the world like a precision team of surgeons, methodically draining casinos of millions. Las Vegas, Macau, Atlantic City, Singapore, London. Everywhere they went, the routine was identical. Ivey would arrive with the reputation of a high-stakes gambler. They would make the same requests: Mandarin dealer, card rotation, automatic shuffler. They would execute the edge sorting system. They would win enormous sums. They would move on to the next casino. The Borgata in Atlantic City paid out $9.6 million across 4 separate sessions. In Macau, they won millions more. Each casino, completely unaware of what was happening, believed they were simply experiencing normal high roller variance. Ivey won big, sure, but high rollers sometimes do. And his reputation as a reckless, aggressive player made these wins seem plausible rather than suspicious. Then came their biggest score, Crockfords Casino in London, August 2012. Crockfords Casino was established in 1828 and had hosted some of the wealthiest gamblers in history. But few names carried the weight that Phil Ivey's did when he walked through their doors with $1 million in cash. The casino eagerly granted his requests. Over 2 nights of play, Ivey and Son executed their system flawlessly. When the session ended, they had won £7.7 million, approximately $12 million. Ivey approached the cashier cage to collect his winnings. That's when everything changed. Instead of payment, the casino handed him a receipt and informed him his winnings were being held pending review. Crockfords had frozen the payout. They didn't have proof of traditional cheating. No marked cards, no collusion, no electronic devices, no misconduct by the dealer. But something about Ivey's win pattern had triggered their suspicions. The casino's surveillance team reviewed the footage, consulted with gaming experts, and reached a conclusion. This didn't look like normal gambling. They refused to pay. Ivey was furious. From his perspective, he had won fair and square. He hadn't cheated. He hadn't broken any rules. He had simply made requests that the casino had freely granted, then used his skill and observation to win. If the cards had a manufacturing defect, that was the casino's problem, not his. He filed a lawsuit to claim his £7.7 million. But while Ivey was fighting to get paid for his biggest score, something far worse was developing. Crockford's decision to refuse payment had triggered a chain reaction across the casino industry. Gaming establishments across multiple continents began reviewing their records of Ivey's play. They analyzed session logs, examined surveillance footage, and consulted with gaming mathematicians. The conclusion was universal. Ivey's winning percentages weren't just improbable. They were statistically impossible through legitimate play. The Borgata Casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey, took action first. In April 2014, they filed a comprehensive lawsuit against both Ivey and Kelly Sunday. But here's what made this case particularly devastating. The Borgata had already paid Ivey his winnings. $9.6 million across 4 separate sessions. Now they wanted every dollar back, plus interest, legal fees, and damages. The Borgata's legal argument was novel. They weren't claiming Ivey had engaged in traditional cheating like using marked cards or colliding with dealers. Instead, they argued he had violated the fundamental integrity of the game through breach of contract and fraud. Their reasoning: when a player sits at a casino table, there's an implicit agreement that both parties are playing by established rules. Edge sorting, they argued, violated that implicit agreement. Ivey had manipulated the game conditions under false pretenses to gain an unfair advantage. Ivey's defense was straightforward and, on its face, quite logical. Edge sorting isn't cheating. I never touched the cards. I never marked anything. I never colluded with anyone. The casino agreed to every single condition I requested. They chose to use those cards. They chose to provide an automatic shuffler. They chose to let the dealer rotate cards at my request. I simply used my powers of observation to notice something that was already there. If there was a manufacturing defect in their cards, that's their responsibility, not mine. His legal team argued that edge sorting was no different from card counting in blackjack, using skill and observation to gain an advantage within the rules of the game. Card counting is legal. Why should edge sorting be different? The legal system, however, did not see it Ivey's way. In 2016, the UK High Court ruled on the Crockfords case. The judgment was devastating for Ivey. The court acknowledged that Ivey hadn't engaged in traditional cheating, but Justice John Mitting ruled that Ivey's actions constituted cheating under UK gambling law because he had deliberately manipulated the game conditions through deceptive requests, represented his requests as superstitious when they were actually strategic, gained an advantage that fundamentally altered the nature of the game. The ruling stated, he gave the impression that the cards were being turned for reasons of superstition when they were actually being turned to identify their value. This was cheating for the purpose of civil law. Ivey lost the case. The £7.7 million, his biggest score, vanished, gone forever. Later that same year, a U.S. federal judge issued a similarly damning ruling in the Borgata case. The court ordered Ivey to repay the full $9.6 million plus interest. Ivey appealed both decisions, but the appeals were rejected. By 2019, Phil Ivey's legal options were exhausted. The Borgata began aggressive collection actions, filing motions to garnish his poker tournament winnings and freeze his assets. The world's greatest poker player was being systematically stripped of his winnings by legal force. Rather than continue fighting a battle he couldn't win, Ivey relocated to Asia, where he participated in private, high-stakes cash games far from the reach of U.S. courts. The Aria Casino in Las Vegas, which had once proudly named a poker room after him, the Ivey Room, quietly removed his name and rebranded it as the generic Table 1. Other casinos that had courted his business now wanted nothing to do with him. He had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you beat the house too effectively. In July 2020, after 6 years of legal warfare, Ivey and the Borgata reached a confidential settlement. The terms were never publicly disclosed, but legal observers believe Ivey paid a substantial portion of what he owed, likely at a reduced amount in exchange for ending the litigation. Kelly's son faced no criminal charges, but she was effectively blacklisted from major casinos. However, she reportedly continued using edge-sorting techniques in smaller venues and private games, and even began teaching her methods to other advantage players. Her story became so legendary that Hollywood took notice. Her life rights were sold, and a film about her exploits, titled The Baccarat Queen, went into production. The Ivey-son edge-sorting scandal forced the entire casino industry to adapt. Within months of the Crockfords freeze, casinos worldwide implemented new protocols, new card designs. Playing card manufacturers redesigned their patterns to be perfectly symmetrical, eliminating the asymmetries that made edge sorting possible. Enhanced surveillance. Casinos installed new monitoring systems specifically designed to detect edge sorting behaviors, including AI systems that can identify when players are making unusual requests about card orientation. Dealer training. Staff were retrained to recognize and report potential edge sorting attempts, and policies were implemented to limit accommodation of unusual card handling requests. Automatic rotation. Some casinos implemented procedures to randomly rotate cards during manual handling, preventing systematic edge sorting even with asymmetric cards. The Borgata, ironically, emerged from the scandal stronger than ever. By 2023, it was accounting for nearly half of Atlantic City's total gambling revenue, having used the publicity to position itself as a casino that wouldn't tolerate advantage play. Crockfords, on the other hand, never recovered. The 200-year-old institution, already struggling in a changing gambling landscape, shut down permanently in 2023. The Ivey incident hadn't blacklisted them, but it had damaged their reputation in ways that proved impossible to repair. Despite everything, the lawsuits, the legal judgments, the blacklisting, the public controversy, Phil Ivey never stopped being Phil Ivey. After years in relative exile, playing primarily in private Asian games where the edge-sorting scandal held less weight, Ivey began returning to major poker tournaments. And he was still brilliant. In the years following the scandal, Ivey continued winning major tournaments. None of the legal battles, none of the casino bans, none of the controversy had diminished his skill at the poker table. If anything, his reputation had grown. To the poker community, Ivey hadn't become a pariah. He had become a legend who had beaten the casinos at their own game. Young players looked up to him not despite the edge-sorting scandal, but in some ways because of it. He had found an edge so perfect that the only way the casinos could stop him was by changing the rules and using the legal system. That's not a villain in gambling culture. That's a folk hero. So who won in the end? On paper, the answer is clear: the casinos. They kept Ivey's money, forced him to repay millions, and successfully argued in court that his methods constituted cheating. But look deeper, and the answer becomes more complicated. Phil Ivey and Kelly Sun exposed a fundamental vulnerability that the entire casino industry hadn't noticed. They didn't hack computers. They didn't bribe dealers. They didn't use hidden cameras or marked cards. They simply observed something that was already there, a manufacturing imperfection, and used it with devastating effectiveness. They forced casinos to acknowledge that their systems weren't as secure as they believed. They proved that with enough intelligence and observation, even unbeatable games could be beaten. The industry had to fundamentally change how cards were manufactured and handled. Policies were rewritten. Training was overhauled. Millions were spent on new security systems. All because two people noticed that card backs weren't cut symmetrically. From a certain perspective, Ivey and Sun achieved something far more significant than winning $20 million. They exposed the illusion of casino invincibility. They proved that the house edge, the mathematical foundation of the gambling industry, could be eliminated through pure observation and intelligence. And they did it legally. The courts ultimately disagreed with that interpretation, but that's a legal conclusion, not a mathematical or moral one. Edge sorting violated the spirit of gambling, according to judges, but it didn't violate the explicit rules as they existed at the time. Ivey lost the lawsuits, paid back millions, and saw his reputation tarnished in some circles. But in the eyes of gamblers worldwide, the people who understand better than anyone what it means to find an edge in an unfair game, Ivey had already won. He had done the impossible. He had made the casino beat itself. And for one brief, perfect moment, he had turned the house's guaranteed advantage into a guaranteed loss. The casinos may have kept the money, but Phil Ivey and Kelly Sun had proven something that no court ruling could erase. The house isn't always unbeatable. You just need to be smart enough, patient enough, and bold enough to find the flaw. And when you do, the casino will accommodate your every request, right up until they realize they've been played.